Most lives don't change all at once. They change quietly, on a normal day, in the middle of a routine that feels permanent. It usually happens through a single decision that doesn't feel dramatic at the time, just reasonable, just logical, just something you can't explain to yourself. And years later, you realize that one choice didn't just change what you did next, it decided which version of your life got to exist. This is the story of a man called David. David didn't ruin his life. He didn't fail. He didn't make a reckless decision. In fact, most people would say he did everything right. And yet, many years later, sitting alone under a sky full of stars on the other side of the world, David would wonder if the life he built came at the cost of another life he never got to live. David's life didn't feel broken. That was the problem. He lived in the same city he grew up in, worked the job that paid the bills, woke up at the same time every morning, drove the same roads, saw the same faces. Weekdays blurred together, weekends felt shorter every year. He had family nearby, parents who were still healthy, siblings building their own lives, old friends who slowly became people he caught up with instead of people he lived alongside. Nothing was wrong, but nothing felt fully alive either. David told himself this was adulthood. This was what stability looked like. This was what people worked toward. And maybe that was true. But sometimes, late at night, he would feel a quiet pressure in his chest. Not anxiety, not sadness, just the sense that life was happening somewhere else. The opportunity didn't arrive as a dramatic turning point. It came as a conversation, a suggestion, something someone mentioned casually as if it didn't matter much. A chance to work overseas. Temporary at first, a year, maybe two, Australia. David didn't think of it as leaving his life. He thought of it as stepping out of it for a moment. He told himself, I can always come back. It's not permanent, or I'll figure it out as I go. His family was supportive, but cautious. His parents asked practical questions. His friends made jokes about him disappearing. No one told him not to go, and that silence felt like permission. The actual decision didn't feel important. There was no dramatic pause, no sense that history was being written. David signed papers, packed bags, said goodbye in familiar rooms that didn't feel like goodbye yet. At the airport, his mother hugged him a little longer than usual. His father gave him advice he'd already heard before. David promised that he'd visit, promised he'd call, promised it wasn't forever, and he meant it. As the plane lifted off, he didn't feel lost. He felt relief. When he made it to Australia, it didn't feel real at first. Everything was brighter, the air felt different, time moved slower. David told himself this is what freedom felt like. Or maybe this was what alignment felt like. He learned new routines, met new people, became someone no one had expectations of yet. Back home, people knew his past. Here, he was only who he was today. That felt intoxicating. He met a woman without even trying. Not through a plan, not through intention. She was just there, in the flow of his new life. They talked easily, laughed without effort, shared stories that didn't require explanation. She didn't know the version of David who stayed. She only knew the version who left. They fell in love the way people do when they aren't trying to escape anything, but also aren't trying to hold on. Marriage didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like a continuation. Children came later, two of them. David became a father in a country that still felt new enough to keep him awake with gratitude. He told himself, "This is my life now." And he was right. Back home, time didn't stop. His parents aged quietly. Family gatherings happened without him. Stories were told that he wasn't part of. Photos were shared. Birthdays passed. Holidays were scheduled around absence. David saw it all through screens. And at first, that was enough. He told himself, "This is just the cost of distance. This is normal. This is manageable." And maybe it was. Years passed. David's life looked good from the outside. It felt good from the inside. He had love, purpose, a sense of having chosen something instead of drifting into it. He wasn't running anymore. He had arrived. And that's when the quiet thoughts began to form. One night, after the house was quiet, David sat alone outside. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of him. The stars felt closer here, brighter, uninterrupted. He wasn't sad, but he wasn't at peace either. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine the life that kept going without him. Not as regret, just as reality. He pictured his parents older than he remembered. Family moments he only heard about later. The version of himself who stayed. And the thought arrived uninvited. What if I made the wrong choice? David didn't want to believe it. He loved his wife, loved his children, loved the life he built. There was nothing to undo. And that's what made the feeling heavier. Because the question wasn't, did I make a mistake? It was, what did this choice cost me that I didn't know I was paying? Eventually, David went back. Not to move, just to visit. When he arrived, the house felt smaller, the streets narrower. Time felt heavier. People welcomed him warmly, but something had shifted. He wasn't missing anymore. He had been gone long enough to become a memory that learned how to live without him. And that realization hurt more than leaving ever did. One evening, sitting with someone who knew his story, David spoke honestly for the first time. He talked about Australia, about love, about building a life. Then he talked about what he missed. The person listened quietly, then said, "If you want, I can help you think through your next move, help you decide what's right." And David paused. And for the first time, he understood something he hadn't been able to articulate before. David shook his head. "No," he said. "I don't think anyone can help with that." The person looked confused. They responded, "Why not?" David took a moment before answering. What he said was this: "Because there isn't a right choice. There's just a choice. And then there's what you're willing to lose because of it." He didn't say it bitterly. He didn't say it proudly. He said it calmly, as if he had finally stopped arguing with reality. David didn't regret his life, but he stopped pretending it was free. He understood now that every path saves one version of you and quietly lets another fade. And that's not a failure. That's the cost of being human. Years later, back under the same stars by the ocean, David watched his children sleep through the window. He felt gratitude. He felt loss. He felt both without trying to resolve them. The earth kept turning. Life kept moving. And somewhere else, another version of David existed only as a memory of a road not taken. Not wrong, not right, just unrealized.